Chapter 441, A Powerful Being Nurtured in Translucent Crystal. From its appearance, the Earth's core was a massive iron sphere, forged from countless iron and nickel atoms pressed together under unimaginable pressure. Its density was enormous, and with that came a crushing gravitational pull. The core accounted for a large portion of Earth's gravitational force. Noah found himself inside that iron sphere, surrounded by intense gravity and lethal heat. He was in his ghost step state, which greatly reduced the gravity's effect on him, and a magic shield he had forged warded off the searing temperatures. Celestial energy pervaded the inner core, and Noah only needed to follow the strongest thread of that energy to find his target. "I didn't expect to be this affected even in ghost step," he muttered. He didn't rush. Instead, he paused to let his body adapt to the environment. High gravity could still throw off his balance in a fight, so he stretched his limbs and adjusted until he felt ready. "That should do it," he said, then pressed on. The Earth's core was vast, its radius rivaling that of the outer core's magma layer. Noah flew at breakneck speed. With the world rune amplifying his boundless magic, he felt no fatigue no matter how far he went. Yet as he drew nearer to the center, something odd caught his attention. The celestial energy grew weaker. He halted and widened his arcane senses, searching for the most concentrated point of celestial power. He had assumed Aurelion the Judge would have placed the celestial seed at the very center of the core, but the reading said otherwise. Celestial power waned toward the center. Off to his right, though, a strong, surging current of celestial energy pulsed, like a giant heart beating. "Did I go the wrong way?" Noah thought briefly, then changed course. He headed toward the surging energy. Before long, he emerged back into the outer core's magma, only in a different region. The pulses became clearer the closer he came, and a smile crept across his face. This time, he had found his mark. He pushed through the endless magma until something other than molten rock came into view, a colossal, semi-transparent crystal. At first glance, it looked like a pillar holding up that entire region of the core. If placed on the surface, it would have been a mountain, but the crystal's size was only part of the wonder. Inside it, wrapped in the crystal like a fetus in an egg, lay a colossal form, a celestial armored figure curled in slumber. "Is this the nascent celestial?" Noah breathed. The magma did not eat at the crystal. A spherical energy shield enveloped it, etched with esoteric celestial patterns that held the molten sea at bay. The magma flowed around the shield, its blazing light making the crystal glitter. Noah drew closer. The celestial group embryo, fully exposed but protected, seemed defenseless. As he approached, though, the being within the crystal stirred. Huge waves of energy pulsed from its body, surging outward toward him. Noah was surprised for only a moment. He raised both hands and called on the resolve rune, forming a guardian energy shield before him. The attack was the embryo's automatic countermeasure, a tremendous outpouring of celestial power for something not yet born but already potent. Noah answered with everything he had. The resolve rune and the guardian shield met the pulse head-on. The impact detonated like a storm. The force pushed the surrounding magma away for miles, carving out a temporary vacuum as molten rock was flung aside. The shockwave shoved Noah backward, but the guardian absorbed the worst and kept him intact. "This really is worthy of being a celestial," he said, lowering his shield. "Such power even before birth." The displaced magma was already beginning to rush back under gravity, surging like a tsunami of lava. Noah's stomach tightened. If a battle erupted down here, could the upheaval travel to the surface? The thought of seismic catastrophe made him hasten his decision. "Better to end this quickly," he told himself. "The sooner this is over, the less likely anything will go wrong above." He spread his arms and let green magical energy surge around him. The resolve rune stirred, and two gems, one blue, one yellow, materialized in his palms. Blue and yellow energies coiled around him, intertwining with his own magic. In that instant, he assumed his most formidable stance, channeling every potent force he possessed. He had no illusions about how dangerous the creature in the crystal was, but he was resolved to finish this before it could do any more harm. Chapter 442, The God Group Awakened Early, Buzz. The resolve rune pulsed inside Noah, and a surge of potent magic swept through him. His eyes flashed with light. The nanotech helmet he had been wearing retracted itself into his belt as power flooded his body. The force of the magic billowed his clothes and lifted the loose strands of his hair, making him look for a moment like a Super Saiyan. As the Resolve rune released its power, Noah pulled the 2 Infinity Stones from his backpack and placed them in his open palms. He had stowed them away before going underground in case a fight broke out. The Space Stone sat in his right hand, a blue vortex of energy unfurling outward. The air around it rippled as if water, the fabric of space itself warping with each undulation. In his left hand, the Mind Stone cast a soft, warm yellow glow that seemed harmless at first, but carried a mesmerizing pull that brushed the edges of the soul. The combined force of the 2 stones and the Resolve rune wrapped Noah in an intense energy field. It behaved like an invisible barrier, isolating him from everything around. The magma that had been shoved aside earlier, which should have surged toward him like a flood, froze at the edge of that field. It churned and roared, but it could not cross Noah's defense. Humph! Magic gathered in his palm, and he pushed his arm forward. A massive beam of light exploded from his hand, the torrent of energy vaporizing magma in its path, and then smashing into the cosmic energy shield that surrounded the celestial group embryo. Where the beam hit the shield, sparks flew. Countless motes of light burst outward, turning the area as bright as day. The expelled energies even vaporized the surrounding blistering magma. The patterns on the celestial shield, golden, flowing sigils of celestial energy, flickered and shifted, resisting the incoming beam with an arcane rhythm. Noah forced more power into the attack. The continuous ray thickened and flared, growing even more brilliant. Under his assault, the shield shuddered. Its intricate patterns became unstable, like a pond's surface after a stone strikes it. Inside the translucent crystal encasement, the curled form of the juvenile celestial group began to move. It uncoiled slowly, stretching as though waking from a long sleep. Its head lifted from between folded knees and arms, and 2 enormous eyes ignited with golden, living flames. Noah watched the embryos stirring with mounting alarm. It seemed to be waking up early. He accelerated his attack, but the beam still hadn't pierced the shield. Quietly, he tuned the Resolve rune and channeled a destructive aspect into the ray, the force of explosion, a power that shattered structures. The dazzling light shifted to a hard, green beam. Rumble. The once sturdy celestial shield began to crack under the impact. The golden patterns flaked and disintegrated. The shield collapsed, and the creature inside reacted as if sensing the change. To Noah's astonishment, the celestial group extended its right hand within the broken crystal. The entire crystalline shell began to lift, and the being inside swelled in size. The crystal drifted upward. Noah's mind raced. The shield was breaking, and the embryo appeared to be trying to free itself. Was it trying to be born prematurely? Whatever its intent, Noah could not allow the crystal to break free and surge through the surrounding layers. The crystal's lift started slow, then accelerated as the celestial within grew more active. He chased after it, firing green rays that struck the crystal and spidered outward into fissures. The crystal's surface fractured under the impacts, but its upward velocity only increased. Noah frowned. He could feel the pull of the mantle growing nearer. If that massive crystal pushed up through the mantle, the seismic disruption would be unimaginable. The mantle was a vital internal layer of the planet. Violent motion there would throw the planet's balance into catastrophic turmoil and unleash devastating earthquakes on the surface. He needed to move the battle, to take the crystal somewhere else where it couldn't wreck the mantle. He stopped firing and reached out with his right hand toward the ascending crystal. The space stone responded, its power streaming into the crystal as Noah attempted to teleport it away. The Celestials, however, resisted the stone's influence. He felt the pushback. The space stone could not instantly teleport the crystal, but its influence slowed the rate of acceleration. The crystal ceased gaining speed. A flash of clarity struck Noah. A golden power began to flow from him, tracing down his right arm and into the space stone cupped in his hand. Chapter 43. A more powerful force of space. The celestial group embryo, deep in the Earth's core, sensed a threat, and surprisingly, awakened earlier than expected. It even tried to break free of the core and force its way to the surface. Noah didn't know whether, if this embryo ruptured the crust and emerged from the Indian Ocean, it would behave like a true celestial and begin to drain all life from the planet. He decided he couldn't let that happen. Noah first tried to use the space stone to teleport the mountain-sized translucent crystal and the golden celestial embryo sealed inside to somewhere else. But once the space stone's power enveloped the entire crystal, teleporting it proved difficult. The problem wasn't the chaotic magnetic fields or the cramped space of the Earth's interior, it was the celestials themselves. Their cosmic energy resisted the Infinity Stone's influence, and the Space Stone couldn't simply yank the embryo free. Tiny spatial rifts flickered and opened under the stone's force, but the golden celestial group still pressed upward. Under that resistance, Noah found it hard to move the embryo to another place quickly. He knew that if he kept struggling, the Space Stone might eventually break through, but there wasn't time. The mountain of crystal was about to smash into the mantle. The surface quake that would follow if it breached the mantle directly was almost impossible to imagine. Still, Noah didn't panic. He kept probing the celestial defenses while thinking, searching for a different way. Then a flash of inspiration struck. Golden arcane energy surged through him, sparked by the thought and streaming from his core into his right hand, which gripped the space stone. This wasn't just any power. It was the flash-derived space force he'd pulled from another world, the same exotic energy he'd already experimented with. During the New York battle, when he first took the space stone, Noah had tried combining it with the flash power he'd extracted using his summoner ability. The two energies reacted in a way he hadn't fully expected. They blended into a unique, much stronger kind of space power. Now the purple gold field returned, coiling around Noah's hand. The flash energy integrated into the space stone. The stone, rather than resisting, accepted the intrusion and merged with it. Their compatibility was unusually high, and the combined power swelled into something far more potent. The massive translucent crystal ignored the outer core's molten heat and the pull of gravity and kept surging toward the mantle. At the critical moment, the blue energy that had enveloped the crystal flared and shifted to a dazzling purple gold. Whoosh! Under that flash, the expanding crystal and the golden celestial inside vanished from their spot as if swallowed by the purple gold light. The instant they were gone, a huge void yawned in their place. Magma rushed in like a flood and filled it. Noah himself dissolved from his old location, carried by the same shroud of light. The outer core fell silent again. Whoosh! Thousands of kilometers away, on the far side of the moon, the massive crystal reappeared in space. Like a small mountain suddenly dropped into the void. The golden celestial group, which had been pushing outward, halted as it realized its surroundings had changed. By now, the embryo had already swollen to several thousand meters tall, its size shifting constantly. Even so, it was still only a nascent celestial, far from the towering, planet-sized entity capable of draining a world with a gesture. Having emerged prematurely, it would need to return to Earth and feed on the planet's life force to make up for the jumpstart, and it likely intended to do so quickly. Noah wasn't going to let that happen. He flashed to a nearby point in the vacuum and hovered, scanning the scene. The crystal had transformed from an inert mass into something like a miniature mountain. The celestial inside had grown proportionally. It was impressive, but not unbeatable. Noah reminded himself of that. If it had been truly mature, it wouldn't have tried to flee. A cloak of purple gold energy wrapped around Noah. It was the merged force of the flash-derived space power and the space stone. The Mind Stone's power remained contained around him as well, kept from mixing with the purple gold because the two energies couldn't safely merge. Noah deliberately minimized their interaction. Meanwhile, the Resolve rune power bolstered his presence, making the purple gold aura even more magnificent, like another sun in the darkness of space. The golden celestial made a new motion, its once fetal posture unfurled, its arms stretched. Creak! A deep, massive crack split the translucent crystal. The fissure raced outward and forked again and again into countless smaller cracks. The celestial's movements exerted pressure from within, and the next instant the crystal burst. Fragments scattered and floated in the vacuum, like confetti thrown across the stars. Noah watched the pieces drift, every muscle ready. The embryo had been forced out into space, but it was not yet safe, not yet a god. He would finish this before it could reach back to Earth for the nourishment it needed. On the far side of the moon, hidden from Earth's sight, two impossible lights hung in the void. One was a mountain-sized golden celestial, towering across the empty black. The other was a pulpy, purplish-golden flame, a small sun in miniature, burning with a ferocity all its own. At the flame's center, a human silhouette floated, a tiny body pouring forth unending fire. No one on Earth could see it. The moon's bulk blocked the view, and even satellites could not detect what lay beyond its far face. But the people who lived there saw everything. Attilan, the secret city of the Inhumans, sat on that hidden hemisphere, a nation born from Kree experiments long ago. Abandoned by their creators, the Inhumans developed in isolation, building technologies beyond ordinary human reach and developing strange powers and severe genetic instabilities. To limit those mutations, they had withdrawn to the moon and to Attilan's smash-proof secrecy. So when two alien lights flared in the sky above them, everyone in the Moon Kingdom looked up. In the palace, King Black Bolt and Queen Medusa emerged onto a balcony and stared. They were as astonished as anyone, a golden celestial opposite a gigantic purplish-golden blaze, an image none of them had ever seen. "Black, what is it?" Medusa asked, eyes fixed on the spectacle. Black Bolt answered in sign, his face registering the same worry. He did not speak because he could not safely. His voice carried power, devastating sonic force. When his abilities first surfaced as a child, a single utterance had reduced his parents to a smear of blood. Since then, he had kept himself silent, relying on sign and the trust of those who could read it. He signed swiftly, then touched Medusa's hand with a command. "Alert the people. Get civilians into shelters." Medusa's red hair whipped as she moved, nodding and vanishing to fulfill the order. As king, Black Bolt had authority over every soul in Attilan. He didn't know the nature of the threat above, but he felt it, a pressure, a suppression like the world itself pressing on his chest. The two entities were thousands of kilometers away, yet the force they put out was unmistakable. Across that same empty stretch of space, Noah watched the Celestial, freed now from the crystalline prison that had bound it, and did so with caution. He gathered the purplish-golden flames into his hands, and the space around him began to fracture. Two immense, compressive forces tore holes in the fabric of space and drove toward the golden giant. The Celestial's face had 4 vast eye sockets, golden fire sputtered in each. He did not want a needless fight. He had hoped to parley, to see whether the confrontation could be resolved without bloodshed. But an attack had already come. He had to defend himself. Like a towering golden pillar, the Celestial spread his fingers. The shattered crystals that had floated nearby answered him, rushing back toward the giant's outstretched arms. They locked and knit themselves into 2 massive crystalline shields. The spatial compressions Noah had sent smashed into those shields. The forces that could rip holes in space collided with the Celestial's armor, and though the shields held for a moment, they webbed instantly with fractures. The impact sent a shockwave through the vacuum. Sound might not travel there, but the raw kinetic force did. When that shockwave washed over the moon, it became a gale that lashed Attilan's streets and tore at the city's rafters. Fortunately, most Inhumans had already taken shelter. Black Bolt watched the skirmish with a king's dread, willing the battle to spare his realm. The first wave of Noah's attack finally shattered the crystal shields into a scatter of fragments. For an instant, the Celestial's arms trembled, but then the fire in his eyes flared brighter. A mysterious force took hold of the broken crystals, and under the influence of cosmic energy, they began to change. The fragments elongated and hardened into spikes, countless, razor-honed, some hundreds of meters long, others only a handful of meters, each catching the light and radiating a cold, murderous glint. They surged outward in a crystalline storm toward Noah. Noah reacted smoothly. He extended a finger and carved a rift in space, a yawning tear into which many of the spikes vanished as if swallowed by the void. But the Celestial had not been careless. He had anticipated such a move. With cosmic power in his hands, he guided the remaining spikes, angling them to bypass Noah's rift and continue their lethal flight toward the flame-swathed figure. Chapter 445, The Gods Use Their New Powers. Boom, boom, boom. Although sound cannot travel in the vacuum of space, the battlefield around the moon was saturated with cosmic energy, space power, and magic, allowing sound to propagate through the ambient energies. The Golden Celestials' counterattack, an unrelenting barrage of crystal spikes, charged at Noah with crushing pressure, each impact sounding like the breaking of worlds. Even on Earth, people could vaguely sense the disturbance on the far side of the moon. Sensitive instruments run by various governments and secret organizations had pegged out, all registered enormous energy fluctuations directed toward the moon, though none could say exactly what was happening there. Calmly, Noah raised both hands. With his left hand open, he met the crystal barrage with a chaotic fold in space. A spatial vortex formed directly in the spike's path. Spikes that hit the vortex twisted like pretzels and then shrank, collapsing inward until they vanished into the vortex's center. While his left hand held that defense, Noah made a seizing motion with his right toward the Golden Celestial. Battle was not turn-based, and Noah had no intention of trading blows politely. A similar vortex-like spatial distortion bloomed around the Celestial, centered on its chest, trying to compress the god into a knot. Creak! 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 As the torque increased, the Golden Celestial's metallic body groaned and deformed. Plates and joints creaked as if they might give way under the pressure. Noah tightened the spatial squeeze. In a few more breaths, the Celestial would be no more than another golden pretzel like the crystal spikes had been. Cracks spidered across its exterior, its arms twisted in impossible angles. The Celestial did not submit. At the brink of collapse, the celestial power within him exploded outward. A tide of raw, cosmic energy blasted against Noah's confinement and momentarily halted the twisting. In that flash, two bright lights flared across the Celestial's torso. Noah felt the surge and assumed it was the enemy's final defiant burst. He drove the spatial pressure harder, channeling force with his freed left hand as well. But after those twin flashes, something changed. The Celestial's form steadied, then violently stretched, wrenching free from Noah's grip. Its massive frame blurred into an afterimage and vanished from its previous spot. The extra spatial forces Noah had directed at the Celestial met empty space. They shredded the region of fabric they struck. Space itself cracked like glass, revealing a deep, pulsing rift. Within the tier, countless currents of space flowed and strange energies bled outward. This is... Noah frowned at the place where the Golden Celestial had apparently teleported. He knew it wasn't truly teleportation, but the result of extreme speed. The Celestial had moved so fast it left an afterimage, and that afterimage had been swallowed by the rift. Noah didn't rush to pursue. Instead, he extended a hand toward the newly torn aperture. The space stone, now suffused with a purplish gold gleam, poured space power into the breach. The rift lay relatively close to Earth, and Noah wasn't willing to risk residual damage to the local space. He used the stone's power to mend the tier. As Noah repaired the fabric of space, the Golden Celestial's body flashed again. Mystical golden runes, traced by cosmic energy, traced themselves across his armor. The cracks in his body began to knit closed. Noah watched carefully, and the realization settled over him. He can actually use the power of the Eternals. Everything the Celestial had just proven, the burst to break free of spatial shackles, the sudden superhuman speed, the instantaneous healing, came from the Eternals' power. The golden runes that lit up on the Celestial matched the runes the Eternals bore. The connection made sense. The Eternals had been created by the Celestials, and whenever the Eternals carried out their missions, at the moment a Celestial appeared, a link formed between them. That link amplified the Eternals' power enough for them to survive a planet's destruction, and it could likewise feed power back to a Celestial. Under ordinary circumstances, a Celestial would have no need to borrow such abilities. A being that could casually destroy a world could easily replicate the Eternals' feats without effort. But this Golden Celestial was not yet whole. He had been pulled from his crystal embryo by Noah before he had fully matured. He was incomplete, weak, and in desperate need of the Eternals' energies to make up the difference. On Earth, the Eternals themselves had begun to notice strange changes. Their powers had suddenly surged, and their physical capabilities had increased. Even Druig and Circe, who had previously been limited in combat roles, felt newfound effectiveness in battle. Druig discovered he could influence deviants more directly. Cersei realized her transmutations could affect living things in ways they hadn't before. The Eternals were full of questions about these shifts. They had no idea a celestial had erupted into the system. Noah hadn't told them. He had only informed the Ancient One of his plan to slip into Earth's core, explaining that if anything went awry, the Ancient One could use time magic as a safeguard. Now, as space mended and the golden celestial's golden runes glowed faintly in the distance, Noah prepared himself. The gods had started to use new powers, and the battle that followed would be unlike anything he'd faced yet. Chapter 446, Attilan Trembles. Under the clash of titans. Noah and the Celestials were locked in a furious battle across the cosmos. Earlier, when the Celestials unleashed a storm of crystalline spikes at Noah, most of them were swallowed by the spatial distortion he had generated. One spike, however, slipped through, not because it was too powerful for the vortex, but because it was too small, only a few meters long. Before it could reach Noah, it was knocked off course by the turbulent forces around them. Still charged with celestial energy, the diverted spike rocketed toward the moon, directly toward the moon kingdom of Attilan. Attilan might be called a kingdom, but in area, it was more like a city. The inhuman population was small, and a single city sufficed. For Noah, the stray spike was a trivial thing he could have easily deflected, but for Attilan, it was a catastrophe. If that celestial-infused crystal struck the city, Attilan would be incinerated, and its people might not survive. Black Bolt, ruler of Attilan, watched with wide eyes as the spike fell. He had no way to sense the danger in advance. He did not have a spider sense to warn him, so he could only watch and hope. He assumed the object would behave like a meteor and shatter against the city's protective barrier. Attilan's transparent energy shield not only defended the city from meteors, it also hid Attilan from outside view. To anyone looking from afar, the shield made Attilan's sight appear as nothing more than a pockmarked patch of lunar surface. When the crystal spike, trailing golden celestial light, struck the shield, Black Bolt braced for impact. To his shock, the shield only hesitated momentarily. The spike then tore clean through, and cracks radiated outward from the breach. Attilan's primary shield had been broken. Panic rose in Black Bolt. That shield did more than block projectiles. It contained Attilan's atmosphere. With it gone, oxygen would pour out into the vacuum of the moon. He had no time to calculate or call for help. The object that had pierced the shield was now plummeting straight toward the city center. Black Bolt's face went stone still. He tilted his head back, and with a throat that had not opened in a very long time, he let out a single, colossal sound. The sound roared out like a tidal wave, forming tangible vibrations that slammed into the spike above. The first strike did not shatter it, so Black Bolt continued, forcing and narrowing the sound into a concentrated pillar of force. Each cry built on the last until the sonic pressure became overwhelming. Finally, the spike splintered. Cracks scabbed across its tip, and then it disintegrated into a fine, glittering dust that drifted away above Attilan. Black Bolt fell silent. For a moment, he simply watched the particles vanish, then the reality of the breached atmosphere hit him. Fortunately, most of Attilan's citizens had already sealed themselves in shelters. Their enclosed habitats contained enough oxygen to survive the emergency. At the city's edge, a second, weaker shield sprang up. An emergency system that, while not as protective or cloaking as the primary barrier, could hold long enough. Around the city, the oxygen generators came back online and began to refill the air. Black Bolt allowed himself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. His wife had reacted quickly. No doubt she had activated Attilan's emergency protocols the moment she sensed the threat. The city had been spared from immediate annihilation, but Black Bolt knew the danger was not over. The spike had been a ripple from a titanic clash above them. Whether that ripple would swell into a wave depended entirely on their luck. He watched the two figures battling in the sky, alert for any further fallout. Those combatants, however, were wholly unaware that a stray fragment of their duel had nearly wiped out an entire people. After repairing his wound, the golden celestial attacked again. Cosmic energy poured into the four eye-like sockets on his face, each alight with fire. Then four thick golden beams shot toward Noah. Is that Icarus's power? The Golden Celestial wondered. Even under my control, can he still use his abilities? Noah's figure flickered beneath the violet gold light, phasing and reforming in an endless, rapid shimmer. Even though the Celestial's necks, twisting with a dizzying speed born of Makari's influence, turned and struck with astonishing quickness, they could not lock onto the infinitely flickering Noah. 4 golden pillars of light swept across the moon's surface, gouging deep ravines into the rock. The Golden Celestial wasn't trying to annihilate the moon. Its attack simply couldn't land because Noah was too fast. He moved like a ghost across the void, a blur of flash bolstered by the space stone. His summoner skill, Flash, had become so overcharged that it could be cast with no cooldown. Even so, Noah didn't want the moon to keep taking hits. If it exploded, he couldn't simply cast planetary devastation to make another one, and a shattered moon would unleash catastrophic tides and devastation on Earth. As he glanced back at the blasted surface, something caught him off guard. Huh? Where did that city come from? A city had appeared where there had only been craters moments before. Noah had no memory of it being there earlier. He didn't yet know that his previous battle with the Celestials had nearly leveled it, but seeing it now convinced him the Celestials couldn't be allowed to continue. The Golden Celestials' lasers kept cutting the lunar plains, but somehow they missed the city directly, carving moats and canyons all around it. Black Bolt of Adelan was drenched in sweat. If one of those beams had hit the city, he knew even his sonic scream might not save Adelan. Luck, for once, had been kind. The lasers merely grazed, slicing trenches around the settlement. When the Golden Celestial unleashed another brutal beam, Noah stopped dodging. He produced the magic cut, a white jade-like blade, instantly. Purplish gold energy poured into the sword. The artifact trembled, struggling under the influx of raw power, but Noah simply laid a hand along the blade. The surge calmed and was contained, the magic cut returning to a serene, artful stillness. The golden inlays along the jade had shifted to a dazzling purplish gold, and a keen sword chi shimmered along the edges, enough to tear at space itself. 4 golden pillars were already bearing down. Noah swung the magic cut through the void. Where the pillars advanced, a spatial rift tore open. From it, chaotic spatial currents gushed like a storm, forming a barrier, Noah's own version of Yasuo's wind wall, but made of warped space. When the golden torrents struck that storm barrier, they disintegrated into dust, dissipating harmlessly into the cosmos as if they had slammed into an impenetrable wall. The attack was neutralized. Then Noah raised the magic cut again and unleashed a blade of concentrated spatial energy. A powerful wave erupted from the sword and surged toward the Golden Celestial. This was no simple wind technique. It carried the force of a spatial storm, a strike that tore at the fabric of the void. The name Noah gave the move felt right. Void Cleave Steel Slash. The purplish gold blade light blinked into being and ripped through the emptiness toward the Celestial. Caught off guard, the Golden Celestial had no time to evade. It braced. Gathering cosmic energy, it formed a dense, arm-crossed shield, an aegis clearly fashioned with the abilities of Eternal Tina. The blade struck the shield with a thunderous impact. Space itself seemed to shudder, and energy rippled outward. The shield, however, was no match. The sword light cut through it as if through soft clay and sliced into the Celestial's arm. Golden sparks erupted, showering the void like destructive fireworks. The life fire in the Golden Celestial's eyes flickered wildly, as if a candle in a gale, buffeted by the sword's astonishing power. With a screech of metal, the arm was severed. Golden energy sprayed from the wound, painting the lunar night in a terrible, brilliant arc. Yet the Celestial did not roar in pain. In the instant the sword had been blocked by its limb, it launched a desperate retreat, tapping Eternal Makari's extreme speed and Icarus's cosmic flight to streak backward across the void. Chapter 448, Deathly Counterattack. Noah had already seen Icarus's speed in action, so fast that even he couldn't react. Combined with Makari's extreme swiftness, it would be terrifying. The being using that speed now was a powerful god. Although not fully matured, its abilities far outstripped those of an Eternal. The newly born Golden Celestial, after sensing Noah's power, chose a lizard-like tactic: sacrifice a limb and flee. It had planned to deal with the intruder who had interrupted its gestation first, then siphon life from Earth to make up for the losses of its premature birth. But it had underestimated Noah. If it didn't leave immediately, survival itself would be in doubt. So when its arms broke, the golden celestial condensed into a streak of light and fled directly away from Noah. Noah was slightly taken aback. He had expected the god to fight to the death, not run. But he had prepared for this. After being outrun by Icarus before, Noah had learned caution, and since this god had just used an Eternal's ability, Noah anticipated it might try to escape with Icarus-like flight. He planted the magic-cut sword upright, closed his eyes, and felt for the lingering spatial signature left on the god by his earlier strike. With a single downward sweep, he tore a rift in the fabric of space and plunged through it without hesitation. He carried purplish gold spatial power and felt no fear of the chaotic currents within the tier. As he stepped into the void, the cosmos seemed to exhale and return to its usual quiet. By then, the golden celestial was already an unknown distance from the moon, beyond the reach of the solar system's shadow. It had transformed into a stream of cosmic energy to push its velocity past light speed. In any other form, such motion would have torn the universe apart. Racing like a meteor past nameless planets, the golden streak had no plan for a direct contest of speed, only to get away. Then a void rift opened not far ahead of it, and a streak of purplish gold shot out, intercepting it with precision. When the two streams collided, a titanic impact flared outward, and a circle of blinding light spread across the void. The golden celestial was blown apart and turned into a meteor, plummeting toward the nearest small satellite. The god slammed into that satellite's surface, carving a massive crater. The purple streak was Noah. He had opened the rift and timed a devastating punch, infused with spatial explosion, into the god's chest, ripping it from flight. The god fell toward a small reddish satellite pocked with iron deposits. Under the star's glare, the world glittered red. Noah charged and reached the crash site. The golden celestial had crawled from the crater. One of its severed arms had already regrown a short segment and would soon be whole. A giant fist print marked its back, where Noah's blow had landed. "Human, why do you pursue me so relentlessly?" the god asked, the first words it had spoken since its birth. Noah didn't rush. He let spatial energy coil around him and sealed the area, cutting off any means of escape. "We have no personal hatred," he said steadily, his power carrying in the vacuum. "But your fate was sealed the moment you parasitized Earth's core." The god's emergence might have been Aurelion the judge's doing, but Noah had no mercy. This celestial had interfered with his A-level task. A dim fire flickered in the golden celestial's eye sockets. It saw Noah's resolve and would not surrender without a counterstrike. Awakened prematurely, its power was unstable. The battles with Noah had already consumed most of its cosmic energy, and even the life fire in its eyes trembled. Now it began to condense its remaining power rapidly. Its broken right arm knit itself back together under that force until it was whole. A brilliant sphere formed in the palm. Cosmic energy braided around it like filaments, rising like a miniature star. Scorching, dangerous heat radiated outward, pressing down on Noah. Even absorbing the blow would be perilous. Noah reacted fast. He swung magic cut and scattered several sword shadows through the air. As those echoes fell, deep spatial rifts opened where the golden celestial stood, like gashes in the god's massive form. The wounds nearly tore the being apart. Its legs snapped as its arms had, yet the radiant sphere still pulsed in its hand. With a roar, the god hurled it forward. The glowing little star burst into full light as it flew and came to rest on the scarlet surface of the satellite. Chapter 449 suffered a heavy blow. Boom! A blinding light erupted, as if a miniature supernova had ignited, bright enough to illuminate an entire system. Although the star the nascent celestial had made was small, its intensity was not to be underestimated. Radiant heat poured outward. Intense electromagnetic radiation and rippling gravitational waves followed. After failing to stop the golden celestial from birthing that tiny star, Noah felt a primal alarm flare inside him, an urgency he had never felt since acquiring the system. His body prickled as if every fiber were warning him that danger had arrived. By the time Noah's sword's shadow fell, the light had already burst from the god's hand. It was too late to dodge. The gravitational turbulence from the explosion distorted space-time, thwarting any attempt at a space jump. He had also sealed off the surrounding area earlier to prevent the Golden Celestial's escape, which now blocked his only exit. Noah channeled everything into defense. Resolve Rune flared and fused with him at his will. The purple-gold spatial power born from the Flash and the Space Stone surged outward, and the Mind Stone's psychic force flowed into his defenses as well. He would have tried to call on the Void, but there simply wasn't time. The entire mobilization took less than 0.01 seconds. Light and impact struck almost together. The little supernova slammed into them, and Noah bore the brunt. The red planet did not fare any better. It suffered catastrophic damage. Under the blast's blaze, the planet's surface was swallowed by searing light. Metallic layers vaporized into invisible gas and dissipated into the void. Farther down, denser material softened and liquefied into roiling magma. Noah's spatial and magic shield took the worst of it. The barrier, woven of space and the magic lock, dissipated the millions of degrees of heat and the crushing shockwave. Still, even with the Resolve Rune reinforcing him, the impact tore at his body. In a single brutal instant, he was severely wounded. The explosion's brilliance obliterated countless retinal cells. His eyes were overwhelmed and cut off from sight. Before he could finish configuring his defenses, the heat and force struck. The casual clothes he'd worn, vibranium garments sewn by Gwen, held him steady in countless battles, but against this pyroclasm, they were vaporized on contact. Vibranium gone, Noah should have been in dire peril, but Resolve Rune reacted instinctively. It exuded a potent life force that shielded his body from lethal heat and blunted the impact. The rune's defensive mechanism kept his injuries from becoming fatal. When the blast finally subsided, a stunned silence followed. A full-size supernova would have left an afterglow lasting weeks, but this tiny star lacked that staying power. As light faded, Noah reappeared amid the ruin, naked, his vibranium clothing gone. His once fair skin was blackened and fractured, fissures glowing with green life energy. The Resolve Rune poured vitality through those cracks. His eyes, briefly pale and clouded, darkened back to their original deep black. Charred layers flaked away to reveal new, unblemished skin. Under the rune's power, his wounds knitted and faded. Life returned to him. Noah breathed deeply, the pain still fresh. It was a hard lesson, a wake-up call not to underestimate any opponent. He'd assumed this being was only a nascent god whose growth he'd interrupted, someone he could easily finish with his current strength. The Celestials, however, lived up to their legend. Even a fledgling Celestial could hit with terrifying power. He drew a sleeve of magic over his shoulders and shaped it into a temporary robe. Then he looked out over the scene. The ledge where he had stood was gone. The red planet itself had been transformed beyond recognition. Its surface and interior had undergone extreme physical upheaval. Its previous structure no longer existed. The supernova's blow had struck him hard, and the world beneath him harder still. Chapter 4 and 50. Have you eaten, Thresh? The red planet that had once been whole was now beyond recognition. Under the onslaught of the supernova, searing heat swept across its surface like a furious storm, vaporizing iron and fertile soil into invisible gases that scattered into the void. Half the planet still kept a rough outline of its former shape, but inside it was chaos. Lava poured from fissures, carving twisted, blistering rivers, and the planet's orbit had been shattered. A force from the blast had flung it out of its old path. It now drifted alone through the darkness, destined to wander the stars like a lost traveler until some future encounter might trap it in another world's orbit. Noah glanced at the ravaged globe, then began searching for the Golden Celestial. He had sealed the surrounding space before the supernova. There was no way the god could have escaped during the explosion. His eyes swept over the field of floating debris until, a few seconds later, a glint of golden metal caught his attention. There, the Golden Celestial. The god's remains drifted beside a massive chunk of planetary debris, carried along by the fragment's trajectory. Noah's space stone pulsed with a purple-gold light, and then he disappeared from where he stood. He reappeared next to the Golden Celestial and stretched his right hand toward it. The spreading purple-gold glow marked the space stone's power activating. Noah was solidifying the surrounding space, locking the god's movements before it could do anything unexpected. The golden celestial and the nearby debris froze. Even motes of dust hung motionless, not because time had stopped, but because the space around them had become rigid. Seeing the god's condition, Noah lowered his hand. Before the miniature star had been created, Noah's frenzy, spatial storm annihilation slash, had already severed the celestial's lower limbs, leaving massive wounds across its body. After it spawned the star, the golden celestial had no cosmic energy left. It couldn't call on Ajax's healing to stitch itself back together. Now its body was broken in several places, the living fire in its eye sockets extinguished, its golden sheen dulled. The lava-like veins that had once flowed over its form had stopped moving. The god appeared dead, frozen in the blackness of space. Noah knew better. The celestial wasn't truly destroyed, only its cosmic energy had been depleted. If anyone later replenished that energy, the god could revive right where it lay. Noah wouldn't allow that. He withdrew the spatial solidification and flew closer to the ruined body. The golden celestial was in pieces. Prior wounds had torn open further when the supernova struck. Noah hovered before its head, which rose hundreds of meters above him, and peered into the empty eye sockets. There was no sign of resistance. Still, he had to finish the job. He released the magic within himself. It spread outward like a conscious field of perception, acting as a radar in his mind to catalog every severed limb and fragment. Wherever a leg, arm, or chunk of the god had drifted, the magic detected it. Then Noah shimmered and vanished. He reappeared with a pair of colossal golden legs, each easily a kilometer long, pushed back toward the broken body. He repeated the process, disappearing and returning with more parts each time. One by one, the scattered limbs and pieces were gathered and set beside the inert golden celestial. Only when the last fragment lay in place did Noah stop his rapid teleportation. He rubbed his chin and considered his options. Could the dark star consume a celestial body that had been drained of cosmic energy? It felt wasteful. Celestials were among the universe's mightiest beings. Their matter could yield insights or create something utterly extraordinary if studied. But by destroying this god, Noah had made an inevitable enemy of the celestial race. He needed every advantage he could get to face the repercussions. Noah decided the safest course was to strengthen his trump cards. He would feed this depleted celestial to the Dark Star Thresh experience card. It would be risky, but the power it might grant could tip the scales in any coming conflict. He reminded himself that he had already severed the celestial's arms on the moon earlier. Those limbs should still be drifting in space and could be retrieved later. The kilometer-long pieces here would be more than enough for his research and for what he intended. He pulled his system backpack free and took out a card, the Dark Star Thresh experience card. Since the first time he had glimpsed the celestial at Earth's core, the card had been wildly agitated inside the pack, but now that Noah held it, the trembling ceased. Have you eaten Thresh? Chapter 451, Devour, Mutation. The experience card had been rattling against the edges of Noah's backpack for a while, as if impatient. The moment he took the Dark Star Thresh card out, the shaking stopped, and it settled quietly in his palm, as if it had found its place. The card almost seemed sentient. Dark Star Thresh, the purple-black fiend, was engraved on its face, a small black hole faintly spinning in his hand and giving off an almost hypnotic aura. Noah raised the card and aimed it at the pile of celestial remains he had collected. "Thresh, do you take this?" he asked. He wasn't sure whether the half-dead celestial would mean anything to the card. Its body held no cosmic energy now, but he let the card decide. The card didn't answer in words. Instead, a dim purple-black light bloomed from it. A ripple of that energy washed over the heap of celestial fragments. Noah did not stop it. He felt it probing, the power of Dark Star Thresh, testing the corpses for worth. The light intensified where it touched the remains. The card trembled in his hand with something close to excitement. Then a continuous metallic clatter began, like a chain rattling and scraping, sharp and persistent. A purple glow flared across the card's face, and from that glow, a black iron chain shot out and extended toward the celestial pile. Noah held the card loose in his hand and watched the chain speed out. He couldn't make out what the metal was. It didn't look like anything from the normal Marvel metals. Perhaps it was forged in the Death Star universe. As the chain drew near the golden celestial's head, a purple-black energy crept along its length, pooling at the tip. A miniature black hole unfurled there, only a few meters across, but its edges swallowed the light around them. Its interior looked bottomless, an abyss that precluded any attempt to see inside. The space nearby warped, stray cosmic and spatial energies were being sucked into the small maw, but those energies were only hors d'oeuvres. The real meal was the golden celestial's body. The black hole began to turn slowly, a deep, terrible hum accompanying each rotation, and its gravity strengthened. Fragments of the celestial were drawn in uncontrollably. The golden celestial, once gleaming, dulled, then warped, twisted, and compressed as it was pulled into the hole. Piece by piece, the carcass was devoured. Noah watched until the last of the fragments vanished into the spinning void. A system chime sounded in his ear, soft and undeniable. Ding! The notification confirmed what he already suspected. The celestial Arishem the Judge had flung into Earth's interior was truly dead. With the golden celestial's death, the A-level task on Noah's mission panel was complete. Rewards and summons were waiting. He didn't open the panel right away. He wanted to secure the card first. As he gripped it, the chains began retracting, the iron links sliding back into the purple light as if someone inside the card was hauling them home. The black hole at the chain's end was pulled back too, shrinking with the chain until it vanished into the card. When everything had returned, Noah turned the card over to study it. From the outside, it looked unchanged. Thresh still stood on the cover, hand raised around a black hole. But Noah had learned every time the Dark Star Thresh card fed on celestial power, it grew stronger. Previously, that had shown only as longer duration. This time, after consuming the body of a celestial group embryo, he had no idea how much it might have changed. Before he could check the card's stats, the card stirred again. Light traced its edge, and the engraved Thresh seemed to move, turned his head to look at Noah. Thresh had no eyes, and yet Noah felt watched. The card had come alive. Noah swallowed and reached for a greeting, but a deep, hoarse laughter beat him to it. Thresh opened his mouth, and the sound chilled Noah's skin. "Little one," the voice crooned, low and cavernous. "Dark Star is pleased with your offering." Noah's mind ran through the phrase. The offering had to be the celestial embryo. Dark Star, was that some higher entity in the Death Star universe that empowered all Dark Stars? Before he had time to puzzle it out, Thresh spoke again. "In return, Dark Star grants power. Join Dark Star and become an existence ever more exalted." Noah barely had time to react. A sheet of purple-black energy slashed from the card and struck his forehead. It flowed over him. He felt it entering, probing. Suddenly his consciousness slipped into a vision. Shapes and scenes unfurling behind his eyes. Strange images and impressions cascading through him as the Dark Star's gift took hold. Chapter 452, Dark Star Erosion. When the power from the Dark Star Thresh experience card surged into Noah, a strange vision unfurled inside his mind. First, there was only absolute darkness and chaos. Then a blue Anivia appeared, wings beating across the void, nebulae clinging to her feathers. She flapped with ancient, majestic force, casting out countless motes of energy like seeds into the emptiness. Those seeds sprouted, grew, and spread, birthing stars, galaxies, and nebulae. With each wing beat, new worlds came into being, planets took orbit around newly forged suns, and whole galaxies began to hum with motion. As that energy kept pouring outward, the bounds of the cosmos expanded. Light and order pushed back the original darkness and chaos. Life arose. Star gods, embodiments of cosmic order, came into being, and Ash led them in preserving the universe's structure. But order never fully banished chaos. The death-omened star, the Dark Star, began to appear, corrupting whole galaxies and folding them into itself. Its goal was absolute annihilation, to devour everything until existence returned to zero. In the vision, Noah was nothing but a shadow, a silent observer at the edge of that creation. Only when the Dark Star emerged did motion return to him. He regained awareness, but his body in the vision was transparent, a shadow form. He looked down at his hands and realized this could not be his true body. His real self must still be somewhere else in that universe. He had somehow slipped into an illusion. He tried to steady himself and recall what he had seen. Anivia, creator and supreme force of that dark star universe, and the star god standing against the dark star's corruption. Even the leader of the dark star should have been no match for Anivia's creative might, yet the corrupting power had shown itself formidable. He felt the echo of that power inside him, but in the illusory body he could not sense its form. Before he could process more, the vision changed again. A massive black hole tore through the scene, swallowing the surrounding cosmos and looming before him. This was no ordinary void. It radiated a bone-deep cold and carried the presence of something far stronger than the dark star Thresh he'd known. As Noah watched, an invasive whisper of nihilistic thought crept into his mind, the urge to drag everything into oblivion. He forced himself to shake it off and watched warily as the black hole rotated in absolute silence. Then, in a flat, emotionless voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, it offered him a single sentence: join the dark star and become a more exalted existence, human. Noah had barely time to register the words before the black hole condensed into a torrent of dark energy and shoved itself into him. Pain exploded through him. It felt as if a galaxy had been forced into his chest. He buckled and screamed as the invasive power pushed to remake him. The vision collapsed. He snapped back into his body, but the dark energy kept pouring in and began to contort his flesh. Consciousness wavered. Noah realized with a chill that the dark star was attempting to reshape him into the kind of abomination he had seen in the vision, what that universe called a dark star demon god. There were precedents. In that other universe, mortals who were consumed by the dark star had risen to terrifying heights. Jarvan IV had ascended from man to a dark star demon god whose rays of a hand could shatter galaxies. But every transformation came at a price. Those beings became unthinking servants of the dark star, instruments of endless destruction. Noah refused that fate. He fought. He summoned his will and triggered every countermeasure he had. The resolve rune embedded in him flared. The two infinity stones orbiting nearby poured their energy into him. Together, they pushed back against the invasive darkness, but the incoming power was vast. Pain tore his limbs apart, and he roared, trying to vent the pressure rather than let it fuse to his soul. Dark energy burst from him in jagged waves. The force swept everything within reach mercilessly. A half-satellite that had survived a prior micro-supernova was shredded. The black surge continued, swallowing the nearby galaxy whole. Planets, suns, asteroid belts, interstellar dust, everything in that star system disintegrated into the void as the darkness devoured them. Noah kept expelling that energy, desperate to stop it from remaking him. The resolve rune and infinity stones supplemented his effort, but it was like trying to hold back the tide with cupped hands. The corruption steadied its assault. He felt it worming deeper. His eyes dimmed, irises bleeding into dark voids. The skin along his arms and face began to take on a faint purple tinge. A sterile, mechanical voice cut through the chaos, distant yet immediate. Ding! Detected summoner affected by irregular energy. Emergency treatment will be immediately performed for summoner. Chapter 453. The system takes action to restore safety. Ding! Detecting the summoner is being affected by an irregular energy presence. Emergency treatment will be immediately performed for the summoner. Just as Noah was struggling to resist the dark star's power within him, the system's notification chimed like a welcome song in his ear. Tem, whatever you're doing, hurry it up, Noah shouted, though he barely heard the system's words over the pressure in his skull. He was pouring everything into holding back the dark star. The resolve rune and the two infinity stones let him contest the dark star's influence, but he couldn't hold out much longer. Ding! Please wait, summoner. The system's tone sounded again. From the depths of Noah's soul, an invisible force surged out, flowed through his body, and finally issued from his glabella. The power was colorless and formless, foreign to this world. It streamed straight for the card in Noah's hand and drilled into it, pure infinity energy boring into the Dark Star Thresh experience card. In an instant, Noah felt the Dark Star's influence within him stop escalating, as if its supply had been cut off. Although the energy didn't continue growing, his body was still saturated with an immense force. The small portion of power he had just released had already devastated the galaxy they were in, an indication of how vast this energy was. The Dark Star Thresh experience card in his hand dulled and reverted to an ordinary card. Once the transmission of the Dark Star's power was severed, the invisible force withdrew from the card and flowed back into Noah's body. Ugh! Noah felt the Dark Star energy inside him receding like a tide. As it dissipated, his body returned to normal, and his blurred consciousness cleared. The blurry vision before him sharpened, and he could see his surroundings again. What happened here? Noah muttered. Everything in front of him had changed. The satellites, the nearby star and planets, everything had vanished. The entire galaxy lay in chaos, as if creation itself were being rewritten. He touched his head, then remembered what had occurred. I remember. It was the Dark Star. He recalled pulling the Dark Star Thresh card out earlier to absorb the Golden Celestial's corpse. Noah looked up at the card floating and rotating in the vacuum. The purplish-black card, stamped with Thresh's image, made him sharpen with vigilance. He didn't reach for it immediately. The earlier experience had shown him how terrifying the Dark Star was, how close he'd come to becoming one of its minions. The Dark Star had tried to alter his consciousness. Had it succeeded, Noah would have become an entity of pure destruction. He suspected the force just now wasn't Thresh's alone, but the power of the mysterious leader of the Dark Star faction in the Death Star universe, the one who created the Dark Star demon gods. He hadn't expected that being could reach through an experience card into this realm. Uncertain why the Dark Star wanted him, Noah wondered if it had seen the existence of a new universe and intended to use him as a foothold to reach Marvel. Out of caution, he held the 2 Infinity Stones in his hand to guard against another assault, then addressed the system. The system had intervened earlier. Perhaps it knew more. System, what exactly happened just now? Summoner, the system replied. Due to an oversight, an irregular power that endangered the summoner's safety appeared within a system item, Dark Star Thresh experience card. The system expresses its deep apology. Such incidents will not occur again. Noah stared at the apology. He didn't say much. The system had fixed the problem, and he hadn't suffered any lasting harm. It was a sort of making amends. System, you processed the card, right? It should be safe for me to take it back now? He glanced at the experience card. Despite what had happened, he still needed its power. The Golden Celestial was dead, and Arishem the Judge and his forces could arrive on Earth at any moment. Without the Dark Star Thresh experience card, they were at a severe disadvantage. Summoner, the system has already processed this item. The experience card will no longer exhibit abnormal phenomena. Please use it with confidence, Summoner. Noah nodded. He reached for the floating card and examined it, poking Thresh's head with a finger. When nothing odd happened, he relaxed. He checked the card's information. After absorbing the Celestial's corpse, the card had not changed. The duration was still 5 hours, and it hadn't been enhanced. Noah sighed. It felt like the Celestial's corpse had been wasted. Not only had he gained nothing from it, he had nearly been controlled. Summoner, to express our apology for the previous incident, the system has prepared compensation for the Summoner. Please claim it, Summoner. Compensation? Noah blinked. He opened the information the system sent and examined it closely. What compensation? How do I claim it? He found no links or items, only a description. When the system processed the irregular power within the Summoner, the system explained, it successfully intercepted and transformed it into a more stable and safe power. This power will serve as compensation for the Summoner. Compensation? Can this power turn me directly into a Dark Star, the unrestricted kind? Noah's eyes lit up as he asked, hope and hunger threading his voice. Compensation? Can this power turn me into a Dark Star outright, the kind without limits? Noah's eyes brightened. When the Dark Star power had coursed through him a moment ago, it had been agonizing, but it had also given him that intoxicating sense of overwhelming control. He found himself hoping the system's compensation would let him feel that power again. The power compensated by the system will not be directly integrated into the Summoner's body, the system replied. It can't? Noah's excitement dipped into confusion. If it wouldn't make him stronger directly, what was the point? After the system processes the power, its nature will transform into a more stable form of energy. According to the system's classification, this energy should be called Star God Power. Star God Power? Noah nodded slowly. If the dark star was volatile and destructive, the star god power sounded calm and precise, the other side of the same coin. He thought of Ash and the legends of the star god faction, of arrows that birthed galaxies. He regretted not having summoned Anivia earlier. With Anivia, he might have reached creator god level by now. The system reminds the summoner that it requires a certain amount of time for star god power to unlock a skin, the voice added. That's fine, Noah said. As long as it wasn't an eternity, he could wait. He opened his information panel and began checking his hero templates, trying to remember who had star god skins. The system had no skin viewing feature. He relied on memory. Yasuo, I don't think so. Ezreal, no. Set, no. Heimerdinger, no. Kassadin, maybe. Malzahar, probably not. He frowned. In his previous life, he'd been poor and bought only the skins he liked, so his knowledge of full skin lines was patchy. Oh, Jhin. I have Jhin's fragments, and Jhin has the Dark Star Sovereign skin, right? If I synthesize Jhin now, will that activate the skin? He wondered aloud. Dark Star Sovereign Jhin is a Dark Star series skin and cannot be activated by Star God power, the system clarified. Noah slapped his forehead. He had momentarily mixed up the series. He paused, then asked the system for a hint. Which of his current heroes could use Star God power, and if none, could it be stored for later? Voidwalker Kassadin and Swiftwind Swordsman Yasuo meet the conditions for using Star God power, the system answered. Star God power cannot be stored. Please use it as soon as possible, otherwise it will gradually weaken. Kassadin? Yasuo? Noah echoed. He knew Yasuo well and was certain he hadn't seen a Star God skin for him, so why did the system say he qualified? He requested the system show the activatable skins. The system obliged, and 2 splash arts appeared before him. Cosmic Reaver Kassadin, Cosmic Windwalker Yasuo. Noah stared at Kassadin's image. It jogged at a half-remembered memory. Yes, Kassadin had an older star-themed skin. He hadn't connected it to the Star God series before because the skin's release predated the wider Star God line. Unless you read the lore closely, the link was easy to miss. Yasuo's splash art puzzled him more. He had no recollection of it. Then he noticed the small, low R tag beside the name. Legends of Runeterra. He'd looked into that card game once. Some of its characters and alternate versions were considered part of official canon in their parallel universe. Skins from other games count too? He thought. Yes, Cosmic Windwalker is an existing character in that parallel universe, the system confirmed. Noah considered the implication. If LOR variants counted, he might be able to activate skins and characters he'd never seen in the main game. With 2 eligible choices in front of him, he faced the decision. Which skin to activate with the Star God power? Chapter 455. I choose Yasuo. I choose Yasuo. Noah didn't know whether the Cosmic Windwalker Yasuo or the Dark Star Thresh was stronger. Both seemed to belong to the Star God faction, and even if there was a gap, it shouldn't be huge. Besides, he preferred Yasuo. The template was the first hero he had ever summoned. He decided, with certainty, to invest the Star God power into Yasuo's template. System, inject the Star God power into Yasuo, he ordered. Okay, Summoner. Injecting Star God power into the Yasuo hero template, the system replied. The Star God power, converted by the system, poured out of Noah and into the part of his soul tied to Yasuo. The force was immense, but unlike the Dark Star energy, it didn't feel oppressive. As the power settled, something new and potent unfurled inside him. Noah felt strength unlike anything before. He raised his hands, inspected them, then clenched them. Star power condensed in his palms, and his skin began to glow a brilliant blue. The glow spread quickly over his body until the power of the stars fashioned a whole new outfit, gleaming golden armor and matching long pants. Noah stared at his reflection in the air. The armor and garb resembled Yasuo's Cosmic Windwalker illustration almost exactly. Even his hair had changed. His usual haircut lengthened into flowing locks whose tips shone with a bluish-purple luster like distant stars. Tiny points of light drifted through his hair like a little constellation. He pressed his hand to the metal breastplate. The metal felt strange, reminiscent of the alloys from the Death Omen Star World, similar to the chains he'd seen on Darkstar Thresh. He couldn't test its hardness. He couldn't remove it to see if it would restore itself after transformation. Still, it was God-forged armor. He assumed it would be exceptional. Below, The clothing that had been stripped by the Celestials was replaced. A pair of pants matched his upper armor, with golden knee guards and flowing constellations etched across the fabric, as if the mysteries of the starry sky were woven into them. "Something's missing," Noah muttered, looking at his empty hands. Then he remembered. The illustration had shown Yasuo with an elegant sword. Had the star god power created clothes, but not a weapon? Before he could worry, the power inside him answered without words. Right then, he reached into his backpack and pulled out the magic cut. He'd put it back when he used the skin experience card. Now, he was glad he had. Had he left it out, he wasn't sure it would have survived the earlier Dark Star release. Even a divine artifact might not have withstood that level of destructive force. The star power flowed from Noah's palm into the magic cut. The sword shifted from a plain white longsword into a star sword that shimmered with starlight, the scabbard itself trickling with luminous points. Noah realized the weapon needed a prepared blade as a summoning medium. The star power augmented the sword he supplied. He drew the longsword. Brilliant white light ran along the blade. Stars winked and streamed across its sides like a river of constellations. Countless points of starlight gathered on the blade's edge, forming a condensed, glittering sea, a miniature galaxy encased in steel. The pattern of dots and lines was intricate and beautiful. "What a beautiful sword," Noah breathed, transfixed. But then he frowned. "Why does it feel not that much stronger?" He tested himself. Gripping the star sword, he swung. A storm of star power erupted, and under his will the storm fractured into burning meteors streaking outward. If unleashed on Earth, it could have been catastrophic. Here, in a galaxy already shattered by dark star energy, the meteor storm simply streamed into the black beyond. It can make stars, he thought, but only small meteors for now. After experimenting a bit, he realized the star god power hadn't reached full godly output yet. Then he remembered a system notice. Unlocking skins took time. Noah opened the system panel and checked the hero templates. Beside Yasuo's page, the project skin was already unlocked. The Cosmic Windwalker skin, however, was only partially activated. The colors were dim, except for a band along the bottom that showed normal color. It looked like a progress bar. When the whole skin regained its color, the skin, and perhaps the full power, would be fully unlocked. Chapter 456, Back to the Solar System, Mission completed. How long until it unlock? Noah stroked his chin, studying the system interface. He zoomed his supervision in on the skin illustration and saw it growing brighter. At that rate, the unlock shouldn't take too long. Still, it'll be at least a few months, no help against the Celestials, he thought. He let go of his star god form. His star blue skin faded back to ordinary human white. He was still unclothed. Noah opened his system backpack and pulled out a spare set of clothes. Gwen's family had left them plenty of extra outfits for emergencies, and Noah kept several in the pack. Once dressed, he felt far more comfortable. Even alone out here, being naked had felt awkward. He glanced around at the chaotic wreckage. It was lucky this had been an uninhabited galaxy, or else his bloodlust would have driven him mad. The unfamiliar galaxy was gone now, but it wouldn't affect anyone back home for years. Light from here would take several years to reach Earth, so astronomers would only notice the disappearance long after the fact. Satisfied everything here was settled, Noah took out the space stone. He planned to return to the moon first to collect the god arms he'd severed, and then check his system for rewards. Without Noah's flash infused, the space stone had reverted to its original blue, and he wasn't sure when he could fully transform it into its purple form. He poured his flash back into the gem and used the resulting purplish gold energy to open a spatial tunnel. The distance to Earth was too far for the teleportation gate. His teleportation gate couldn't span that range. While the teleport skill could, there was no teleportation anchor on the moon. So Noah chose the spatial tunnel. A cloak of purplish gold light wrapped him, and he plunged into the turbulent corridor between spaces. Inside, spatial turbulence rolled without constraint. This interstitial region, what ships used to jump between galaxies, was empty. Noah had used the same route to chase the golden celestial from the moon to that distant galaxy. Now he followed the traces he'd left back to his starting point. Soon, he reached the far side of the moon. With a wave, he split space open. a rift tore like a zipper. Noah stepped through and emerged in lunar orbit, then smoothed the tear and watched it close. The golden celestial's massive arms still drifted in the void, unclaimed. Even half an arm from a several thousand-meter-tall celestial was nearly 1,000 meters long. Noah flew over to one and placed his hand on it. Instantly, the giant limb vanished from the universe and reappeared inside his backpack. No matter how massive the object, anything stored in his pack shrank into a single small slot. He didn't know the pack's limits, but so far it had held everything. He flashed to the other arm and stowed it as well. "Done," he said, then turned to the task panel. The task interface opened, and Noah's heart raced. One of the A-level tasks that had hung at the top of his panel for ages now showed a completed icon. These A-level tasks were practically permanent fixtures. Finally, one was finished. A-level task, God Revitalize. The target god Tiamut, which threatened Earth's safety, has been successfully slain by you. At least now you needn't worry about Earth's core being violently ruptured by a giant. The matter is not completely resolved. A new crisis is imminent. Please look forward to it. Look forward to what? I'd rather they didn't come, Noah grumbled at the warning. But that celestial was, well, now he's dead. He hit the task settlement button. Congratulations, Summoner, for completing A-level task. God Revite acquired essence, 6,000 points. Awesome, 6,000 points. Noah whooped, thrilled. 6,000 essence was a huge haul, enough for a 10-pull summon. He'd already accumulated 5,400 essence, just 600 short of a 10-pull. With this reward, he now had 11,400 essence. Perfect. Hopefully, I'll get something useful before the big fight, Noah muttered, turning his eyes toward the moon and Moon City. He decided this summoning would be done on the moon. Chapter 457. Attilan on the Moon. In the city of Attilan, the two unfamiliar, powerful figures that had loomed over the skyline had vanished, but Black Bolt did not relax his vigilance. The citizens were still being evacuated in an emergency, yet some members of the city's administration and his most trusted aides had been summoned to his side to review what had occurred and to plan their next steps. "Your Highness," Karnak said, "based on your account, I will summarize briefly. Two unknown beings, whether creatures or some other form, appeared in the sky above Attilan and engaged in combat. During their clash, a falling object was sent hurtling toward the city. It struck and fractured our main protective shield. In the end, Your Highness personally intervened and destroyed that object." Black Bolt stood in the conference chamber, flanked by his closest advisors. Queen Medusa was at his side. Karnak, who had just finished speaking, remained composed. He was a bald man with dark blue markings across his face and favored a green leather suit. His gift was analytical. He could detect structural weaknesses and simulate battle conditions in his head. He was also exceptionally strong, able, after reading the trajectory and stress of a bullet, to split one with his bare hands. "The shield we're operating under now is only an emergency barrier," Karnak continued. "It provides basic defense, but lacks optical stealth. Attilan is exposed to outside observation and potential attack. Also, because the shield momentarily vanished, the pressure differential between the interior and exterior did severe damage to many structures." The news was grim. The conference room fell silent, heavy with concern. "Have you identified those two entities?" Medusa asked. "No." Karnak shook his head. He motioned toward the display below. Two technicians in white robes were gathered around a high-tech console suspended above a pool of water. They sat on low stools that extended from the pool's surface. On the screen was a captured image, one side filled with a gold light, the other with a shimmering purple gold. On the gold side, a humanoid silhouette appeared, blurred and disproportionate, suggesting something enormous. The purple gold side showed only shifting light and shadow, no clear form. "We can't even see what they look like," Gorgon said from the side. The leader of Attilan's royal guard and Black Bolt's personal protector, Gorgon was a burly veteran warrior whose power allowed him to produce localized seismic tremors with a single stomp. "What if they come back?" "Gorgon, don't leap to conclusions," Karnak replied. "We can't yet prove they are hostile. We should hope they're not. If they are, I'm not sure Attilan is prepared to confront such power." "It could be some experiment from Earth," someone offered, Maximus, perched on the stairwell. Maximus was Black Bolt's younger brother. Unlike Black Bolt, whose voice was a weapon he must never use casually, Maximus had no powers at all. In Attilan, some Inhumans never activate any ability when exposed to the Terrigen Mist at 18. Despite carrying Inhuman genes, they remain essentially human. Those who fail the rite are relegated to the lowest social roles, minors, unless other circumstances intervene. As the prince's brother, Maximus had been spared that fate, but he had always cultivated radical ideas about expansion and conquest. "Here he goes again," Gorgon muttered with clear distaste. Maximus was prone to advocating a takeover of Earth. He believed the moon was too small and unsuitable for the future of the Inhumans and urged the royal family to claim Earth's resources and territory. Black Bolt had always rejected such plans. He did not want war with humans. "Maximus, stop with your fantasies," Karnak snapped. Medusa's eyes flicked to Black Bolt, who said nothing. The silence in the room held weight beyond the words. It was a reminder of the fragile line Attila now walked, exposed, damaged, uncertain of the threat that had passed over them. Chapter 458, Delusion of the Earth. "Sister, look what I brought." "Maximus, stop spouting your foolish ideas," Karnak snapped, unconvinced that the beings in the sky had anything to do with humans. From what he knew, humanity's technology hadn't advanced that far. Because Maximus was Black Bolt's brother, but had no powers, many of Black Bolt's inner circle quietly looked down on him. Karnak and Gorgon were no exceptions. Any outward respect they showed was only for the sake of formality. Privately, they dismissed him. As older relatives, one a paternal cousin, the other maternal, they simply had no patience for the irritating younger brother. Maximus flared. He pushed himself up from the steps and pointed at the image on the screen. "The enemy is at our doorstep. How can you be sure this has nothing to do with humans? Our shield isn't holding fully. How do you know they won't discover Attilan?" He jabbed his finger not so much at Gorgon as at a set of small, old-looking machines tucked into a niche behind him. "Look at these. Human detection devices. They've already tried to find us. Why do we keep waiting to be found? Why don't we take the fight to them and make Earth our home? We wouldn't have to be cramped on a little moon forever." Karnak frowned. "Those aren't spy devices, Maximus. They don't even know Attilan exists. They're lunar rovers, exploration probes. Occasionally, they crash into our shield while working on the moon. We recover and dispose of the wreckage to conceal ourselves. Earth thinks the losses are bad luck because they don't know what happened." He steepled his hands with the calm of someone used to shutting down Maximus's wild schemes. "As for the shield, I've had the engineers speed up repairs. It will be fixed soon. There haven't been any recent detection efforts from Earth, so there's no immediate risk of discovery." Hearing his claims dismissed, Maximus bit back further argument and turned to his brother. "Your Highness, Attilan's on the brink. Even if those incidents weren't caused by humans, we can't be sure they won't come back. If they do, Attilan will be in danger. We should move to a safer place now. Earth is the perfect location." Black Bolt studied him in silence. His eyes were deep and implacable. Maximus shifted under that steady stare. At last, Black Bolt signed a few short motions. Medusa read his gestures and translated, "Do nothing, wait and see." Karnak and Gorgon exchanged approving nods. Maximus's face flushed with frustration. "It's always like this, brother. You always decide to do nothing." He descended the steps and stepped close to Black Bolt. "Sooner or later, humans will find us. When that happens, their reaction will be to destroy us." "You're so certain, Maximus. Is it because you're one of them?" Gorgon couldn't help the sneer in his voice. Black Bolt signaled sharply for Gorgon to stop, but Maximus's indignation boiled over. "I am not one of them, Gorgon. No matter my genes, I'm an inhuman like you." He struck a pose of wounded pride. Gorgon only sniggered. Black Bolt put himself between them and signed for silence. Then he turned to Medusa. "Where is Crystal? She should be here." Crystal, Medusa's younger sister, was also a member of the royal family, second only to Black Bolt in raw power. She could command fire, water, ice, lightning, and air, like an elemental archmage. She was still young and sometimes unsteady with her gifts, but they were formidable. She also traveled with a large bulldog named Woundwort. The beast's power was teleportation. It could instantly transport Crystal great distances, even from the moon to Earth. Medusa's brow creased. She hadn't thought much of Crystal's earlier message. She'd told them over the communicator that she'd seen something interesting and would arrive soon. But now she felt a prickle of concern. The outside was dangerous. What had Crystal meant by something interesting? A ripple of distortion appeared in the external space. Everyone recognized the familiar shimmering trail that accompanied Woundwort's teleportation, and for a moment they relaxed at the expected arrival. Then that relaxation hardened into surprise and alertness. It wasn't just Crystal and Woundwort who stepped out of the teleport. Standing beside them was a dark-haired man in plain earth clothing, an ordinary human by appearance. "Hey, Medusa, I'm here," he said. Chapter 459, New Summons, New Heroes. Just as the Attilan royal family in the conference room were about to voice their concern over Crystal's absence, Crystal herself suddenly appeared, teleporting into the chamber, accompanied by her inhuman dog with teleportation ability. To everyone's surprise, she hadn't arrived alone. Standing beside her in simple earthling clothes was a man they didn't recognize at first, Noah. How he had come to teleport here with Attilan's princess went back to a decision he had made moments earlier, to summon on the moon. Rewinding a little, before the royal meeting began, Noah had stepped again onto the lunar surface. He wasn't wearing a bulky white spacesuit this time. He stood in a shirt and loose trousers. As he descended from space toward the moon, the purplish gold energy that had fused Flash and the space stone around him dissipated. The fusion unraveled, and the gem shifted back to an azure blue. The space stone, restored to its original form, drifted down into Noah's hand, its slow descent pulled by the moon's gravity. Noah turned the azure infinity stone over in his palm. After using the space stone so much, he felt he was finally starting to control its power more naturally, likely helped by the Flash inside him, which let him form a deep connection with the stone. He toyed with it until his feet touched the lunar regolith, then flipped his hand and stowed the space stone in his backpack. Earlier, he had already put the Mind Stone away. The Resolve rune that had been burning at full strength inside him gradually cooled. There were no enemies around, so he let combat mode subside and calmed the roaring power within. "Is this the far side of the moon?" he murmured, taking in the rugged landscape. Because the moon's rotation period matches its orbital period, one face always faces Earth, while the other always faces away. That far side, often called the dark side, wasn't drastically different from the near side, but it bore more and larger craters. The near side had the shelter of Earth blocking many meteorites over countless years. The far side had none. That isolation was exactly why the Inhumans had built their nation there. Noah glanced toward the distant city, planning to explore later and see who lived there. For now, he had a different goal, a 10-pull on the moon. No magic shield wrapped him now. Thanks to the Resolve rune's long-term conditioning, his body was strong enough to survive in space on its own. His lung capacity could hold him for hours, and the rune's life magic could substitute for oxygen if needed. He opened his system panel, brought up the summoning interface, closed his eyes, and drew a deep breath. It's drawing time. A moon draw should be special, right? Who should I ask for luck? Since I'm on the moon gods it is. Noah rubbed his palms. He always liked a little ritual before a draw. He recited the moon deities he could remember: Chang, Selene, Mani, Soma, and Khonshu. Many of those moon gods existed in the Marvel universe. He wasn't really expecting them to bend fate for him. This was superstition more than supplication, but being on lunar soil made the names carry weight. From Earth or other pantheons, moon gods could hear him here. They listened with curiosity to an ordinary human who wasn't even a follower, but they couldn't directly influence him as they might their devotees. Finished with the incantation, Noah pressed the 10-pull summon button. A familiar blue vortex formed on the panel. Having grown more familiar with spatial power, Noah could sense that the vortex wasn't merely local, it seemed to hook into countless universes. He didn't dwell on its structure, though. Lights, the summoning orbs, began to drift out of the portal. The orbs revealed their contents one by one. Boots of Swiftness, Random Hero Shard X1, Doran's Shield, Doran's Blade, Randuin's Omen, Guiding Lantern, Ice Witch Lysandra. Noah clicked on each orb as it passed. Most of the early spheres were equipment. Complete items materialized: a pair of boots, Randuin's Omen, a small backpack. Then the seventh orb did something different. Instead of waiting for him to select it, the light shot out and struck Noah's forehead. Noah didn't flinch. He smiled with pleasant surprise. That direct contact wasn't an attack. It was the system's signal that he'd pulled a new hero template. When the light sank into his skin, a cold ripple spread through him. The lunar surface beneath his feet began to ice over. White frost crawled outward from where he stood, coating the ground as the new summon imprinted itself into his being. Chapter 460, The Story of the Frost Witch. As the orb merged with Noah's mind, a memory surfaced. He slipped into the perspective of the memory's protagonist and watched the events unfold through another's eyes. When that other self glanced into a mirror-like surface, Noah saw a face that made him stop. Lysandra. That confirmation told him who he had summoned this time, the Ice Witch, Lysandra of the Freljord. Noah pushed the surprise aside. This Lysandra was not the one he knew. The real Lysandra waited for him on Earth, so he let the memory carry him. Long ago in the frozen wastes of the Freljord, humans lived under the shadow of powerful demigods. As humanity grew stronger, some sought independence from those gods. 3 women rose to lead that cause. The eldest, Serilda, the middle sister, Avarosa, and the youngest, Lysandra. For years, they led men in battle, trying to carve out a future where people could survive the harsh north on their own. But human strength proved insufficient against the land and its monsters. Desperate for power, each sister sought out a patron. Serilda ascended toward the heavens and bargained with the first twilight aspect. She lost her voice and became mute. Avarosa descended into the depths and met the first thing from the void. She lost her hearing. Lysandra sought Volibir, the thunder god, and in exchange for power, she lost her sight. Blind, she could no longer see the world, but the loss came with a cruel gift, a strange, uncanny perception. She could move through dreams and see the world through other beings' eyes. That ability changed everything. Through those borrowed visions, Lysandra sensed a force deep beneath the earth that did not belong to Runeterra, the first Void Watchers stirring below the surface. Remembering her sisters' sacrifices and their people's plight, she made a secret bargain with the Void without telling them. She would help the Void come to Runeterra, and in return, it would grant the 3 sisters near-immortal power. The Void kept its word. The sisters were poured full of the Ice bloodline, the most potent cold magic in Runeterra. With that power, they crushed enemies, beasts of the tundra, trolls and Ursine folk alike were either slain or broken, and soon the 3 sisters ruled over the Freljord. But Lysandra's secret could not stay hidden. When Serilda and Avarosa discovered what their sister had done, they were horrified. If the Void was released, the world itself could be lost. United rule meant nothing in a ruined world. They sought a way to seal the coming horror. They found Orn, the Forge god, Fire of the Mountain, and begged him to dig a pit so deep the Void could be imprisoned within it. Orn obliged, carving out an abyss of immeasurable depth, the Howling Abyss. Still, even that gulf and their power together were not enough to hold back what lurked below. The sisters asked Orn for an indestructible bridge to bolt the abyss shut, and he forged it, an eternal span over the Void. Lysandra then worked her magic on the bridge, shaping and binding it. Her sisters did not understand its true purpose. In truth, the bridge was not meant to seal the Void directly. It was part of Lysandra's own plan. She had not been convinced the Void was solely evil, perhaps because it had answered her in that moment of desperation, and she used the bridge to confine and conceal creatures that would serve in a ritual to open the world to the Void. When Serilda and Avarosa learned this, they turned on Lysandra. Civil war broke out among the 3. Midway through the conflict, the terrible truth could no longer be delayed. The Void poured through the cracks they had fought so desperately to control. The earth split. Thousands of soldiers vanished into the yawning chasm. First, one thing crawled up, an impossible, writhing mass that sprouted horns, flaps, and terrible, multiplying tentacles. And then another and another, each more distorted than the last. The Watchers poured into the world. Lysandra watched and was struck by a terrible clarity. She had been wrong about the Void. The horror of what she had unleashed forced a single choice on her, to undo what she had caused, at any cost. She gathered her power, absorbing the magic around her, Even the remnants of her sister's gifts and the strength of their followers, she drew everything inward. Then she released it all in one devastating, absolute act of ice. The Void Watchers, her sisters, and their armies were sealed together into the gaping pit, the howling abyss. The bolt she had forged with Ornn and the enchantments she laid over it held the creatures fast. The price was ruinous. Lysandra lost her sisters, her people, everything she had hoped to build. She bound herself to the seal she had made and swore to guard it for as long as breath remained in her. Her sin, her betrayal, became her penance. She would spend the rest of her life maintaining the seal so that the void would not again spill forth. 10,000 years she kept watch. Noah watched the memory fade and sat with the weight of it. So this was the story of the Ice Witch Lysandra.